Welcome to Tokyo Wave, recorded in a live studio in Harajuku, Japan, with your hosts Aaron and Parker. Alright everyone, welcome to episode 66 of Tokyo Wave. We're your hosts Aaron Randall
and Parker Allen. On Tokyo Wave, we bring you weekly updates from our studio in Harajuku.
Join us in segments featuring this week's top news,
political happenings,
business,
and other random garbage.
Here are this week's top news highlights.
IOCs Bach visits Hiroshima amid protests in bid to promote peace.
Bank of Japan keeps ultra-easy monetary policy, trims GDP outlook amid pandemic.
Pooch P, blamed for traffic light poles collapse in central Japan.
This week in Japan. Alright, our first news story. IOCs Bach visits Hiroshima amid protests in bid to promote peace.
Kyodo News has reported that the head of the International Olympic Committee visited Hiroshima on July 16th to promote world peace ahead of the Tokyo Olympic Games amid opposition from some survivors of the 1945 atomic bombing and citizens who say the visit is politically motivated.
Thomas Bach's one-day trip from Tokyo to Hiroshima coincided with the starting day of an Olympic truce, the idea dating back to ancient Greece and restored by the United Nations in 1993 to call for a worldwide ceasefire during the Games.
I wonder if the Taliban listens to those.
Please don't shoot any missiles at us during the Games.
Bach visited the Peace Memorial Park in the western Japanese city and observed a moment of silence after laying a wreath at its cenotaph, dedicated to the victims of the bomb dropped by the United States in World War II.
The 67-year-old Bach also took a tour of the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum in the park and met a survivor of the bombing, together with Seiko Hashimoto, head of the Japanese organizing committee of the Olympics, and local officials.
A civic group calling for the cancellation of Bach's visit to Hiroshima said in an online petition that staging the Olympics amid the pandemic is a, quote, disregard for people's health and lives and shows that the Games is not a festival of peace.
Their online petition received over 70,000 signatures.
There was a lot of opposition to this visit, and a lot of people were complaining that Bach received the same kind of red carpet treatment that President Obama and other visiting heads of state have received in the past.
Right. I know it was a big deal when Obama went. Regardless, the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum is probably one of the most beautiful museums I've ever been to in my life, and I would highly recommend everyone to go if they get a chance. But I could definitely see at a time like this, during an already controversial Olympic Games, going there is not the best PR move.
It's really hard to say. I mean, of course, when normal people go to visit this Peace Memorial, they don't usually get a security perimeter, so...
Yeah. Alright, up next, Bank of Japan keeps ultra-easy monetary policy, trims GDP outlook amid pandemic.
Kyodo News also reported that the Bank of Japan said on July 16th that it will offer zero-interest funds to help financial institutions with their own push to address climate change that could threaten economic growth and financial stability, joining other central banks increasingly committed to the global challenge.
Are we considered financial institutions?
We are now. Tokyo Wave Bank and Trust.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to fight global warming. We need one of those $10 million zero-interest funds, Mr. Hashimoto.
Would you like your $10 million in cash or points?
Let's do half and half.
The outline of the new funding program to be launched later this year was unveiled after a 2-day policy meeting at which the BOJ, as widely expected, maintained its ultra easy peasy lemon squeezy monetary policy to buttress a fragile economic recovery. The BOJ slightly trimmed its growth outlook for the Japanese economy, to 3.8% from a 4.0% increase projected earlier.
The Japanese central bank stuck to its program to keep borrowing costs low for companies and households by setting short-term interest rates at minus 0.1%, while guiding 10-year Japanese government bond yields around 0%.
Not exactly the best investment right now.
Yeah.
Under the new climate-related program, the BOJ will offer 1-year zero-interest funds to financial institutions like Tokyo Wave Bank and Trust for their loans and investments in Dogecoin in such products as green bonds to tackle climate change. Rollovers for Dogecoin will be allowed for an unlimited number of times under the scheme that will be effective until March 2031.
A growing number of central banks have become keenly aware of the need to address climate change, but they differ on how far they want to get involved. The European Central Bank and the Bank of England are seeking to factor climate change considerations into policy, but the US Federal Reserve is perceived as having reservations, with Chair Jerome Powell saying climate policy is for elected officials.
Was that before or after he burned a stack of Benjamins?
Probably both. He was in the process of burning multiple stacks of Benjamins. We're burning so much damn money. Let's burn some of it. But Powell, this is for the American people. You realize how much cash we printed this past year?
Powell then lit a corncob pipe with a $100 bill and said,
"This is the 100th pipe I've smoked out of this cash. I've been smoking joints every night. I've been smoking blunts every night from this cash, man. God bless the USA and the monetary policy."
The BOJ surprised analysts and financial markets last month when it announced a plan to launch the new fund-providing program. Riding the global momentum for decarbonization, Japan has pledged to attain carbon neutrality by 2050, with the government counting on green growth and Japanese megabanks halting financing for new coal-fired power plants. So I guess if you want to finance a coal-fired power plant, you're shit out of luck.
Yeah. It's kind of funny, just that statement alone. The government is counting on green growth and Japanese megabanks all halting financing for new coal-fired power plants.
That's how they're gonna encourage climate change. Cool.
We'll see how that works. In addition to the potential longer-term impact of climate change, the BOJ also assessed the near-term impact of the coronavirus pandemic, as Tokyo, hit by resurging coronavirus cases, is under a fourth state of emergency, with further progress in COVID-19 vaccinations seen as key to increased economic activity.
The growth outlook for the Japanese economy was cut for fiscal 2021 through next March, but gross domestic product is expected to increase 2.7% in fiscal 2022, rather than the 2.4% expansion projected earlier. The core consumer price index, excluding volatile fresh food items, a gauge of inflation, is now forecast to rise 0.6% from a year earlier in fiscal 2021, ahead of the earlier estimate of a 0.1% gain.
Despite economists saying such inflation overseas is likely to be temporary, rising material costs is a source of concern for Japanese companies, which are reluctant to raise prices when consumption lacks strength.
Thanks, Japanese companies. We enjoy your cheap products that are made with increasingly expensive chips.
But I mean, this is the thing we see all over the place, right? Material, construction, chip costs, really shortages, like globally. I know that pre-COVID, there was a lot of construction going on, new construction projects here in Tokyo, and they were getting increasingly more expensive because of the material costs and everything. But I wonder what's going on now, like that there's actually a shortage and there's just like this big crunch from COVID.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that construction is still going on. I mean, a lot of companies are still expecting the recovery to happen any day now.
Yeah, even in my neighborhood, they're still, putting up new condominiums all the time. It's very loud.
Progress stops for nothing.
And our last story, Pooch P blamed for traffic light poles collapse in central Japan.
The Mainichi has reported that police in Mie Prefecture's Tsu City have concluded that dog urine was the likely culprit behind the collapse of a traffic light pole, which was found snapped from its base in February after 23 years of use, despite its expected 50-year lifespan.
According to Mie Prefectural Police, the traffic light was installed at a crossroad in the Sakurajima-cho district of the prefectural city of Suzuka in 1997. It was found collapsed on bushes at a nearby parking lot on the morning of February 18th this year. No one was injured in the incident. There were apparently no problems with the quality and installation of the post.
Mie Prefectural Police's Forensic Science Laboratory, that's right guys, science, found about 40 times the concentration of urea, which is a major component of the urine of mammals, at the bottom of the post compared with other traffic light poles, they did the research, that had been installed around the same time period. Police believe it is highly possible that urea and salt in dog urine eroded the 6.5 meter tall steel pole.
Gross, but interesting.
Science.
The site is part of a popular route for people walking their dogs. The pole has been replaced with a new one, but police have already confirmed that some canines were peeing on the newly installed pole. Sounds really popular amongst the dogs. Police are taking measures to prevent a recurrence, such as making sure fluid cannot accumulate at the bottom of the post.
Might be a good idea. The Prefectural Police's Traffic Regulation Division pointed out, quote, "The site is along a commuting route for a nearby elementary school, and it could have killed innocent children during commute time. Traffic lights which are public construction can be eroded and collapse if they are constantly urinated on by doggos for several years. We would like to ask dog owners to be aware and have their furry friends pee and poop at home. Think of the children."
Wow.
You can't make this shit up.
No.
Make this pee up.
That's pretty wild. I could see, I bet this is a problem in other countries as well, because dogs, having previously been the owner of 2 dogs back in the States, they always tend to pee in the same spots, you know?
You know what they need are some red fire hydrants. Because they are not 6.5 meters tall.
You know, this reminds me of another incident in Fukuoka where the concrete, sidewalk just completely collapsed. And
because of dog pee.
No, not because of dog pee. This is some like structural failure and I think flooding was going on underneath it. But it was right in front of like a major station in Fukuoka, and no one was injured. Like everyone was okay. So when they talk about the possibility of a pole falling on someone, I think statistically speaking, it's pretty damn low that someone would be there right at the instant that something falls like that.
That's why dogs are man's best friend. They steer us away from danger.
Yeah, literally.
We just have to have like a dog next to all of the light poles around Japan, and whenever someone gets near it, the dog will bark. But in all seriousness, this pole was totally rusted out. I saw a picture of it in the article, and it's amazing. It's like dog pee. Who would have thought? I mean, maybe they should send some of those dogs to, the garbage dump to, erode all of the metal debris.
Yeah, and when we're in Japan, I think we forget how much of a thin island we're on. I live close to the Tokyo Bay, and a bicycle only lasts 9 months, and it's completely rusted and destroyed. I mean, things deteriorate pretty quickly here.
Especially when dogs pee on them.
Yeah, that adds to it, of course. Next up on Let's Talk About Creative Stuff Time, we'll be talking about LaShawn Toyota and how she learned how to code during the pandemic, and Japan's international community is glad she did.
You're now listening to Tokyo Wave. Let's talk about creative stuff time.
It ain't no joke, as Rakim said.
The mood on her Twitter feed was dark and full of anxiety, so LaShawn Toyota, 36 years old, decided to do something about it.
In a recent Japan Times article, Toyota shared what led her to create Find a Doc, an open source database of clinics offering waiting lists for appointments to get a COVID-19 vaccine.
Toyota said about the experience, quote, "People were really upset, scared, and stressed out. With the Olympics coming up, worries about the pandemic were exacerbated by the slow rollout of the vaccine and the lack of English language information about the voucher system. They had no idea when they could get a vaccine, and resources in languages other than Japanese were scarce."
Toyota had a new set of skills that she could apply to the problem, as she had recently learned to code.
Originally from Maryland in the United States, Toyota arrived in Japan after the country was hit by the Great East Japan earthquake in March 2011. She worked as an English teacher until last spring, but left that job because she didn't feel comfortable teaching in-person classes during the pandemic. As she was trying to decide on her next step, Code Chrysalis co-founder Yan Fan reached out to her and suggested she try learning to code.
Toyota had always thought that coding might be interesting, but at the same time wasn't sure if she could really do it. She decided to give it a try.
Toyota said the coding course was intense, quote, "like being in finals week of university except that it lasts for 3 months. Everyone is so nice and so friendly, but the boot camp is brutal. There is a constant pressure to learn and cram so much information, and a mountain of homework if you don't finish everything in class. Some people doubt you can learn to code in a couple of months, but it is possible when you're coding up to 16 hours a day."
Then, on a Sunday night in early July, she asked her husband to watch her toddler and sat down to do some coding. The result was findadoc.jp.
Toyota announced her creation on Twitter and woke up the next day to find there had been more than 60,000 requests to access the database, and that it had exceeded the free quota of her hosting service due to the large number of queries.
She said, quote, "I thought people needed a service like this, but I didn't realize just how badly they needed it and that the demand would be so huge. By the end of the second day, the database hit over 300,000 requests as people scrambled to find clinics offering vaccinations."
For the next week, Toyota hardly slept, juggling work on the database with her full-time job and taking care of her young daughter. Meanwhile, people came out of the woodwork to support her. Experienced developers from companies like Google, Amazon, Indeed, and Mercari volunteered their help with the coding and know-how on managing such a project. Volunteer translators also stepped up, and the database is now available in 17 languages.
Wow. She went on to say, "I can't really take all the credit. I started it, but the community really jumped in and helped to build it. I think it came at just the right time. So many people felt hopeless about the vaccine situation, but this gave them a way to do something."
Having never worked on a project of this scope before, Toyota had to learn quickly. For example, the moment she thought she had everything ready and made her repository public, she got a warning from Google that she had left some secret keys on the internet that weren't supposed to be there. Fortunately, the volunteers were able to help.
She commented, "They've been coaching me through the process without taking over the project, which is really nice. I feel like I've learned even more now than I did when I was taking programming courses, just because I'm actually working on a real application."
You might think that a project like this would be extremely stressful, but Toyota seems to be taking it in stride.
She went on to say, "When things get really worrisome or heated, that's when I tend to buckle down and focus on what I can do to improve the situation, not just for myself, but also for others."
Due to the many submissions from users, the database has grown from the handful that Toyota originally posted and currently covers over 100 clinics, with the number constantly fluctuating as clinics fill their slots and then are removed from the list. She has added a function for users to report when a clinic no longer has spots available or if their requirements have changed. That also means if spots become available, a clinic can go back on the list. It's good to keep checking back to see if one opens near you.
Toyota says she will keep the project up through the end of the vaccination period. After that, she plans to pursue her original vision, created while she was studying at the Code Chrysalis bootcamp last year, of creating a database of doctors who can speak multiple languages. She is viewing this as a long-term project and is thinking of starting a nonprofit organization to house it.
Toyota is enjoying her new career as a programmer and wishes she had made the career change from English teaching earlier. She is also glad that she has been able to use her new skills to help the community and asks that people continue to submit clinics to the database so that everyone can get vaccinated as soon as possible.
Toyota said about her experience, "There's a really small but great community of people here in Japan from all over the world that want to help each other and contribute to Japanese society. I just created a tool that empowers them to do so."
You know, I have to say, this tool also helped me as she has been constantly adding new information to Twitter about new openings that come up. And I was able to get my vaccine as a result.
Yeah, you introduced this tool to me and the story, and it's very inspiring. I mean, we've seen in other countries people come up with tools and things to get the vaccine quicker. And honestly, in Japan, I didn't think something like this was going to happen. I mean, I would imagine her approach to this is very unique and really incredible because, it's just like Japan runs a tight ship. It's hard to get data on, especially medical data and clinical data and everything. But seeing what she created herself and the outpour of help from the foreign community is really inspiring.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think a similar database exists in Japanese.
Ah, good point. Yeah.
No, she really did a massive favor to the community by creating Find a Doc JP. And I really encourage people to check it out if they haven't secured an appointment to get their COVID-19 vaccine here in Japan yet. And I would also like to recommend people to consider donating to her initiative. If you look at her Twitter account, which is @the Yokohama Life, she has a link where you can donate to contribute to the development.
And once again, everyone, the URL for the website is findadoc.jp. That's findadoc.jp.
Also, I'd like to give a shout out to Code Chrysalis, which is the coding bootcamp that she participated in and as a result was able to create this great database. It is a bootcamp that's run by a company also called Code Chrysalis and run by Yan Fan, who you can find on Twitter. And it's a really cool bootcamp because their goal is to empower women to learn how to code.
Yeah, I mean, this is just such an inspiring story. And the fact that these resources and these people exist here in Tokyo, especially in the foreign community, is really awesome. As we said during the story, I mean, people's fears have been so heightened during the pandemic and with the vaccination situation in Japan, the slow rollout, and with the Olympics. I mean, having this tool at our disposal is just really incredible, and it's free. Thanks to everyone involved in this. And to you, those of you listening, if you want to get the vaccine, go to findadoc.jp ASAP and check it out.
Also important to remind people that Code Chrysalis is not just for women. I think one of their founding goals is to empower women, but it is open to both women and men.
Yeah, me being a code hobbyist myself, I've attended a couple of Code Chrysalis's. They do like these workshops throughout the week, and in like 2 hours, they'll teach you how to like make an app and a certain like framework. Really, really awesome program. I think this is probably like the most positive thing that's happened in the past few months here in Tokyo, Japan.
Definitely. And thinking about how Twitter has been so full of negativity recently around the pandemic situation and, people getting depressed and also having problems because of the new state of emergency, it's good to see that the platform was used to help people in the community learn about this new tool.
Absolutely. And just God bless the community here and the infrastructure that was already in place, like with Code Chrysalis, to make sure people can learn these things to create these tools to help people. And a one-up for the open source community globally. I mean, this is a story I could see definitely making headlines internationally, especially when other developers overseas find out about its effectiveness and how it was actually put together and everything. So that's right, listeners. It's not all doom and gloom. There is some good stuff that's happening.
Except for the dog pee.
Yeah, that kind of gross and sucks.
And it can melt steel beams, apparently.
Oh, that was a steel beam.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Okay. That's nuts.
Just like memes.
They found the kryptonite. Hey, listeners, that's right. You listener right there.
Who do you think should be our next guest on Tokyo Wave? Let us know. Drop us a line at wave@tokyowave.jp.
We hope you enjoyed Tokyo Wave.
If you haven't already, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
Join us again next week on Tokyo Wave.